At 2:17 in the afternoon, you walk back to your car, tap a screen, and pay $28 to leave a building you did not want to visit in the first place. Nobody cooked you dinner, nobody repaired your car, the garage just kept your car behind a gate for 2 hours and charged you more than a decent meal to let you take it back. So parking looks like the perfect business: concrete, painted lines, a gate, and a customer who cannot leave without paying. But a parking garage can make a fortune and still be a terrible investment. It can be full every day and still get demolished. And the thing that makes one space worth $28 can make the entire building worth less than the land underneath it. Because a parking garage is rarely a business about parking. It sells something no operator can manufacture: the right few square meters in exactly the right place at exactly the moment you need them. By the end, you will know what you are really paying for, why the math is much uglier than it looks, and why the best garage in town may eventually be torn down. When you pay to park, it feels like you are renting an empty rectangle of concrete. You are not. You are renting proximity. You are paying to place a 2-ton object within walking distance of an office, a stadium, an airport, a hospital, a restaurant, or an apartment building. The garage is selling access to everything around it. That is why the same parking space can be almost worthless in one location and wildly expensive 5 blocks away. A garage next to nothing has a problem. A garage next to a packed downtown, an event venue, or a terminal has a captive audience. The customer is not comparing it to another product. They are comparing it to being late, missing a flight, carrying groceries for 20 minutes, or circling the block while their reservation disappears. Parking operators understand this better than anyone. Their pricing does not just follow the cost of the structure, it follows urgency. At 9 in the morning, near an office district, the price rises because commuters arrive together. Near a stadium, the price rises because thousands of people must appear during the same narrow window. At an airport, the price rises because dragging a suitcase onto a bus feels worse than paying another $20. The garage does not need to convince you it is worth the price. The city has already done that for it. But here's the part people miss: high prices do not automatically mean high profits. Because before a garage earns its first dollar, somebody had to buy or control the most expensive thing in the entire equation: the land. A parking garage looks simple from the outside, but it is not a cheap shed with a few ramps. It needs foundations strong enough to carry hundreds or thousands of cars. It needs drainage, lighting, ventilation, elevators, fire protection, security systems, payment equipment, accessibility features, maintenance that never feels urgent until a concrete deck starts cracking above somebody's car. And then there is the problem that makes everything worse: cars are terrible tenants. A parked car needs a stall, an aisle, a ramp, room to turn, room to enter, and room to leave. Every vehicle consumes far more building area than the painted rectangle you see from the driver's seat. So imagine a developer with a prime downtown parcel. They have two options. They can build apartments, offices, hotel rooms, or stores, uses that can earn money from valuable indoor space. Or they can spend a fortune constructing a building designed mainly to hold empty metal boxes. That only makes sense when the location is valuable enough, the demand is dependable enough, or the garage is supporting something else that makes even more money. This is why parking is not a universally great business. A garage is a giant fixed cost machine. The debt, land, repairs, taxes, insurance, and staffing or management systems do not disappear just because fewer cars show up on Tuesday. And that creates the first brutal rule of the business: a parking space earns nothing when it is empty, but it still costs money every day. Now, let's do the kind of calculation that makes people fall in love with parking garages. Take a hypothetical garage with 500 spaces. Suppose it charges an average of $20 a day. Suppose it fills 60% of those spaces across 250 working days each year. That is $6,000 in gross revenue per weekday. Over a year, that is about $1.5 million in gross revenue. And the seductive part is what is not on the list. There is no restaurant kitchen, no warehouse full of inventory, no fashion trend that can make your product obsolete, no perishable food, no sales team trying to convince anyone they need parking near a hospital at 10:30 in the morning. The product is already there. The customer arrives in it. That is why parking looks like a license to print money, but gross revenue is where the fantasy begins, not where the business ends. First, follow the $20 bill. The person running the garage may not own the garage. In one common arrangement, the property owner keeps the parking collections while a parking company earns a management fee. In another, the operator keeps the gate revenue but has to pay rent, operating costs, and sometimes a share back to the owner. So a garage can collect a lot of money without the person at the gate keeping much of it. Then come the costs: payment systems, cleaning, security, insurance, utilities, taxes, repairs, debt payments, and eventually the deeply unglamorous task of keeping a giant concrete structure from slowly destroying itself. Then comes the question that can make or break the entire investment. How full is the garage when demand is not obvious? A garage can charge $20 during the rush and still struggle if it sits half empty for the other 22 hours of the day. The strongest facilities do not merely sell a daily space once. They stack revenue from commuters, monthly pass holders, event parking, hotel guests, nearby residents, delivery drivers, and sometimes advertising or electric vehicle charging. The ideal garage sells the same square meter of city land to different people, for different reasons, all day long, but that still does not explain the really weird part. Why would a developer ever choose to build parking when the land might be worth more without it? Here's a twist most people miss. In many dense places, the garage is not the main business at all. It exists because another business needs it. An office building wants tenants who can drive to work. A mall wants shoppers who can carry purchases home. A hospital wants patients and visitors who cannot reasonably arrive on a bike. A hotel wants guests who expect their car to disappear when they hand over the keys. The garage becomes the price of making the more valuable building work. In other words, the garage may not be the product. It may be the admission fee for the product next door. Sometimes that means parking is bundled into rent. Sometimes it is validated by a retailer. Sometimes it is operated by a specialist company. Sometimes it is owned by a city because the city believes nearby businesses need it to survive. But the logic is the same. Parking can be less of a standalone product and more of an expensive piece of infrastructure supporting a bigger economic machine. That is also why the price can feel detached from the service you receive. You are not paying only for a space, you are helping cover a system built to keep an entire district convenient enough to function around cars. And convenience has a strange property. Once people depend on it, it stops feeling like a luxury. Nobody says, "I am delighted to pay for a garage." They say, "I have no choice." That sentence is the business model, but captive demand has a dark side. When the surrounding district changes, the garage can go from indispensable to obsolete faster than people expect. Now imagine the owner has done everything right. The gates work, the spaces fill, cash lands in the account every day. Then a developer walks over, looks at the same parcel, and sees 200 apartments, a hotel, offices, shops, or a mixed-use tower. Suddenly, the garage has a problem. It is making money, but not enough money for the land it occupies. It may be profitable, but it may not be the best use of the land. This is the central tension in parking economics. Parking is valuable because land is valuable, but when land becomes valuable enough, parking starts looking like a low return use of the very thing that made it profitable in the first place. A garage can be earning money and still be losing the argument against redevelopment. That is why parking structures are often temporary in a city's long story. They can be demolished, they can be wrapped by new buildings, they can be converted, although conversion is often much harder than it sounds, because a garage has low floor-to-floor heights, sloped decks, ramps, and layouts designed for cars instead of humans. The garage made money by occupying prime land. Eventually, it can be pushed out by something that makes even more money from that same land. This is also why the best parking investments are rarely just a bet on parking demand. They are a bet on a neighborhood, on whether it will remain car dependent, whether people will keep arriving, and whether the land will one day become too valuable to waste on cars. Which brings us to the risk that nearly broke the simple parking story. Parking revenue can look stable right up until it is not. Commuting patterns change, a major employer leaves, a shopping district declines, a new train line opens, remote work empties offices, an arena moves, a city changes street design, ride sharing changes pickup behavior. A recession makes people stay home. The garage itself cannot easily adapt. A restaurant can change its menu, a store can sell online, a hotel can lower prices and chase tourists. But a parking garage has one core product, a place for cars in one location. If fewer people need that place, the building does not have many second acts. And because so much of the cost is fixed, declining occupancy hurts fast. You still have the structure, you still have the debt, you still have insurance, you still have the concrete that needs repair whether anyone parks on it or not. This is why the glamorous part of parking, the high hourly rate, is misleading. The real question is not how much can we charge? It is how reliably can we fill the building for the next 20 years? That is a much harder question. And it is why a parking garage is not a passive income machine. It is a very expensive prediction about how people will move through a city. So, why is parking so expensive? Not because the gate is sophisticated, not because concrete is rare, and not because a painted line on the floor is somehow worth $28. Parking is expensive because city land is expensive, access is scarce, and at the moment you need a space, your alternatives are usually worse. The winning garage does not sell concrete, it sells certainty. Certainty that you can make the meeting, catch the flight, carry the bags, walk into the stadium before kickoff, get your child to the hospital without turning the trip into a second crisis. And that certainty is worth more than it feels like it should be. But there is one final irony. The better a city becomes at giving people alternatives to driving, the less valuable the parking garage can become. So every garage is built around a contradiction. It profits from the city being crowded, car dependent, and inconvenient, while the city's long-term goal is often to become less of all three. The next time you pay $28 to get your own car back, remember what you actually rented, not a parking space. A shortcut through a city that ran out of space a long time ago.